It was an ordinary winter morning at Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport, where the crisp Alaskan air carried the faint hum of jet engines and the promise of routine departures. Passengers bustled through the terminal, their breath visible in the chilly air as they sipped steaming coffee, checked luggage, and made their way to their gates. At Gate 42, a Boeing 737-800 stood poised on the tarmac, its sleek exterior reflecting the pale morning sun. To the untrained eye, it was just another flight, one of thousands that departed Anchorage each year. But beneath its polished surface, an unseen flaw lay dormant, waiting to transform this unremarkable journey into a harrowing saga that would echo from the Alaskan wilderness to the halls of Washington, D.C. The weather that morning was a pilot's dream. Clear skies stretched endlessly over the rugged Alaska range, with only a few wispy clouds dotting the horizon. The forecast promised smooth flying all the way to the flight's destination, Seattle. Passengers boarded with the usual mix of excitement and exhaustion. Business travelers firing off last-minute emails, families embarking on winter vacations, and locals returning home. None could have imagined that their decision to board Flight 214 would thrust them into an ordeal that would redefine aviation safety standards. In the cockpit, Captain Elena Martinez, a seasoned pilot with 18,000 flight hours, and First Officer James Carter, with a decade of experience, ran through their pre-flight checklist with meticulous precision. The aircraft's maintenance log was pristine, showing recent inspections and no reported issues. The ground crew, bundled against the cold, completed their checks with the efficiency of a well-oiled machine. As the engines roared to life, their familiar whine reverberating across the tarmac, there was no hint that this flight would be anything but routine. The pushback was seamless, and the 737 taxied smoothly toward runway 7R. Air traffic control's voice crackled through the radio, granting clearance with the same calm professionalism as always. The takeoff was textbook. Engines roared, the plane accelerated, and it lifted off, climbing gracefully over the snow-draped peaks of the Chugach Mountains. Passengers settled in, some flipping through in-flight magazines, others gazing out at the breathtaking Alaskan landscape below. The plane reached its cruising altitude of 35,000 feet, slicing through the crisp air with ease. For 20 minutes, everything was perfect. Then something changed. It began subtly, almost imperceptibly, a faint vibration emanating from the aircraft's left engine. Most passengers didn't notice, distracted by their books, screens, or the gentle hum of the cabin. But for those seated near the left wing, the tremor felt off. It wasn't the familiar jostle of turbulence, but a rhythmic, mechanical pulse that seemed to ripple through the airframe. In the cockpit, Captain Martinez's eyes flicked to the instrument panel. The left engine's performance metrics showed a slight anomaly, a temperature increase of 1.5 degrees Celsius per minute and a minor fluctuation in the engine pressure ratio. It wasn't enough to trigger an alarm, but it was enough to raise her pulse. "Keep an eye on that," she told Carter, her voice steady but laced with caution. The first officer nodded, adjusting his focus to the engine readouts. The flight data recorder would later reveal that the issue stemmed from a hairline fracture in one of the engine's compressor blades, a defect too small to detect during routine inspections but catastrophic under the stresses of high-altitude flight. As the minutes ticked by, the vibration grew stronger, evolving into a pronounced shudder that rattled window shades and sent ripples through passengers' drinks. Flight attendants, trained to notice the subtlest shifts in an aircraft's behavior, exchanged uneasy glances. The cabin's usual symphony of sounds, engine hum, air vents, passenger chatter, had taken on a discordant note. One attendant, Sarah Nguyen, paused near a window and glanced at the left engine. What she saw made her heart skip. A section of the engine's outer cowling was beginning to loosen, flapping slightly in the 500 miles per hour slipstream. She hurried to the intercom to alert the cockpit. "Captain, we've got a visual on the left engine," Nguyen reported, her voice tight. "The cowling looks like it's coming apart." Martinez and Carter exchanged a look. A detached cowling at 35,000 feet was a nightmare scenario. Exposed engine components could overheat, seize, or worse, send debris into the airframe. The cockpit's warning systems, designed to detect major failures, remained eerily silent, underscoring the insidious nature of this malfunction. The crew's training kicked in. Martinez initiated a gradual descent to 25,000 feet, hoping to reduce stress on the engine, while Carter radioed Anchorage Air Traffic Control, requesting priority for an emergency return. Anchorage Tower, this is Flight 214, declaring an emergency. We've got a mechanical issue with the left engine and need vectors for immediate return, Carter said, his tone calm but urgent. Flight 214, roger. Turn left heading 270, descend and maintain 15,000 feet. Runway 7R is yours. The controller responded, clearing the airspace. As the plane began its descent, the situation deteriorated rapidly. The fractured compressor blade finally gave way, sending a cascade of metal fragments through the engine. The cowling tore free, exposing the engine's core to the frigid, low-pressure air. The left engine began producing erratic thrust, causing the aircraft to yaw unpredictably. Passengers gasped as the plane shuddered violently, tray tables rattling and overhead bins creaking. Those near the windows stared in horror at the mangled engine, its exposed components glowing faintly from overheating. In the cockpit, warning lights finally erupted across the instrument panel: low oil pressure, engine overheat, thrust imbalance. The automated systems struggled to compensate, but the damage was too severe. Martinez took manual control, her hands steady on the yoke as she fought to keep the plane level. The descent became a balancing act. Too steep, and the damaged engine could fail completely. Too shallow, and they risked running out of time. Carter worked the radios, coordinating with Anchorage and relaying updates to the cabin crew. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain," Martinez announced over the intercom, her voice a beacon of calm. "We're experiencing a mechanical issue and will be returning to Anchorage. Please remain seated and follow the crew's instructions." On the ground, Anchorage International Airport sprang into action. Emergency response teams, fire trucks, ambulances, and hazmat units lined up along runway 7R. The tower cleared all other traffic, giving Flight 214 undisputed priority. But as the plane neared Anchorage, a new challenge emerged. A fast-moving weather front had swept in, bringing gusting winds and patches of icing. Visibility dropped to 2 miles, and the runway glistened with a thin sheen of ice. Martinez and Carter recalculated their approach, factoring in the compromised aerodynamics and turbulent winds. The damaged engine was now barely functional, producing sporadic bursts of thrust that made the plane lurch. The crew's training and teamwork were pushed to their limits. Martinez focused on keeping the plane aligned with the runway, while Carter monitored the dwindling fuel levels and cross-checked their speed and altitude. In the cabin, flight attendants secured loose items and reassured passengers, many of whom were visibly shaken but remarkably composed. At 1,000 feet, the runway lights came into view through the swirling snow. The winds battered the plane, forcing Martinez to adjust her approach angle repeatedly. The landing gear deployed with a reassuring thud, but the damaged engine chose that moment to seize entirely, sending a final jolt through the airframe. Martinez compensated with the right engine and rudder, her movements precise despite the chaos. "Brace, brace, brace!" the flight attendants called as the plane descended through 100 feet. Passengers hunched forward, clutching their seats. The runway loomed closer, its icy surface a daunting target. With a screech of tires and a spray of snow, the 737 touched down, skidding slightly before Martinez brought it under control. The plane rolled to a stop near the runway's end, surrounded by flashing emergency lights. Cheers and sobs filled the cabin as passengers realized they were safe. The crew, exhausted but professional, oversaw an orderly evacuation onto the tarmac, where paramedics and airport staff awaited. The incident made headlines worldwide, not just for its drama but for its aftermath. Investigators traced the engine failure to a manufacturing defect in the compressor blade, prompting a global recall of similar components. The FAA and NTSB lauded the crew's skill, using Flight 214 as a case study in crew resource management. New safety protocols were implemented, including enhanced inspections for engine components and improved training for partial cowling failures. For the passengers and crew, The ordeal was a testament to human resilience and the unsung heroism of aviation professionals. Captain Martinez, First Officer Carter, and their team were hailed as heroes, though they insisted they were just doing their jobs. As for the passengers, many reunited with loved ones in Anchorage that day. Their stories of survival a powerful reminder of how quickly the ordinary can become extraordinary.